Story 1. Being a musician on the road can be enjoyable, but it is not for everyone. Story 2. Professor or academic. Even in an Oxbridge college, which is quite glamorous, it is an endless maze of disconnected online portals, passwords, grant applications, and bureaucracy. You spend a significant amount of time on administrative tasks, and even more if you are successful. The disparity between your earnings and what you could make in the private sector as you advance is considerable. Story 3. Event planning. I was an event professional for over a decade, and everyone always says, "Oh, what a fun job," picturing it as just a never-ending Pinterest board. In reality, it's mostly Excel spreadsheets and people being frustrated about how cold the room is. Story 4. Media of any type, such as television, radio, or newspapers, often offers low pay and terrible hours. A media workplace that is not toxic in some way is a rarity. Story 5. Architecture involves coordinating trades and ensuring compliance with code and egress requirements. Story 6. Photography involves a lot of setup and takedown of equipment, ensuring that you remember everything and transporting it all. I primarily cover events such as fashion shows, private parties, and location shoots, which means I carry around approximately 10 pounds of equipment in a harness or hit bag for hours. Keeping a few pounds of gear in front of you may not seem like much until you have to do it for 5 hours straight. Additionally, the equipment can get hot, which means you will end up sweaty. I love it, but it is physically demanding and far from glamorous. Story 7. Firefighting. Most career departments perform 90% medical runs. My town repeatedly assists the same homeless individuals and has not experienced a significant fire in over a year. It is still the greatest job in the world, but it is not what it appears to be on television. When you do go to fires, it is heartbreaking because someone has just lost everything. Story 8. Working in the field of glamour can be extremely hard on the body and mentally taxing. Many professionals, such as hairstylists and makeup artists, often have to quit after 10 to 20 years because their arms, joints, shoulders, feet, and backs are severely affected. Conditions like carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis are prevalent. The chemicals we use can lead to serious health issues, including cancer, kidney problems, respiratory issues, and fertility concerns. Additionally, overhead costs are high, the work is demanding, client expectations are often unrealistic, and many people view this profession as a hobby rather than a legitimate career. Story 9. Librarians tend to be portrayed in the media as sexy individuals, or as people who simply sit and read all day. I have encountered individuals trying to secure librarian jobs for their teenagers without realizing that it requires a master's degree. While we do not have the luxury of reading on the job, we interact with the public, which can include intoxicated individuals, those experiencing homelessness, individuals with mental health issues, and entitled patrons who believe their taxes fund our salaries. In such cases, I would gladly return their 85 cents if it meant they would leave. We often deal with theft of materials and subsequent outbursts from patrons who cannot check out other items. Some confrontations require us to involve law enforcement. Many libraries have begun training their staff to administer naloxone, and they frequently expect librarians to also take on the role of social workers. This does not even account for the programming we conduct. All of this for approximately $18 an hour, despite the advanced degree required, as it is considered a feminine field. There is an expectation that we work ourselves to exhaustion due to the prevalent notion of vocational awe. Story 10. Working in luxury can be enticing. Dealing with high-profile clients and selling small bags and trinkets worth more than an entire salary sounds appealing. However, after my experience with Louis Vuitton, I encourage wealthy individuals to invest in helping others. No one needs a $3,000 purse. Far more good can be accomplished with that abundance of money than on unnecessary material possessions. Story 11. Advertising has been a lot of fun. I have shot commercials in locations such as Los Angeles, New York, and New Zealand. I have met many interesting, creative people and done various intriguing activities. However, it can also be a serious grind, with long hours, unpredictable clients, and constant subjectivity. After 35 years in the business, I consider it a minor miracle that I have gotten this far without a substance abuse problem, a divorce, an affair, or regular conversations with a therapist. Story 12. Any profession can be described as glamorous. However, unless you are in a profession focused on glamour, it often comes with an expiration date and high performance costs. Story 13. Architects, despite what George Costanza thinks, often find their job to be mundane, and the pay is generally not great. Story 14. The film industry can be absolutely soul-sucking, especially for below-the-line crew members. Sure, it's kind of cool seeing celebrities in person and experiencing movies that haven't been released yet, but the hours are insane. If you're lucky, you'll work 10-hour days, though normally it's more like 12 to 14. Some days you're up at dawn, and some nights you're working until sunrise. When you're on a show full-time, you have no time to do anything outside of work. When you're day playing, they shuffle the schedule so much that you can't plan anything. When you're not working, you start to panic about money. You're constantly searching for your next job. Dealing with the egos of directors and producers can be a nightmare. You're often working outdoors. If you live in an area with seasons, you'll be freezing in winter and sweltering in summer. I left the industry when COVID-19 hit, and I've never looked back. Story 15. Event planner, the Pinterest boards mislead. It's largely stress, last-minute chaos, and concealing your panic with a smile. Story 16. U.S. diplomacy involves a variety of officers, but not all resemble the formal figures seen on television engaging with important politicians. In reality, many Americans with diplomatic status spend their time handling routine bureaucratic tasks at the embassy, returning home after a standard workday. Their satisfaction with the host country often depends on their openness and adaptability as individuals. Story 17. Anything creative. You have clients who pay your bills but often think they know more than you. You are not creating your own vision. You are creating someone else's vision, which is often poorly conceived and overused. Deadlines are tight, and much of the work is dull and repetitive. Story 18. Physicians face a surprising amount of paperwork, and it seems that more and more patients come in feeling entitled and thinking they are medical experts despite lacking any training. I feel less like a doctor and more like a customer service representative. Story 19. I don't think people consider this glamorous necessarily, but people definitely think it's more cute and dainty than it is. Baker. Story 20. Although many people are aware of the realities of the job, I want to address stripping and sex work in general. Every time a young person expresses a sincere interest in pursuing that path, my heart sinks a bit. Story 21. Not glamorous exactly, but people romanticize working in a bookstore, especially used bookstores. Many customers call to see if you have a book they loved as a child. They often don't know the title or author, but they remember it had a yellow cover and rhymed. They can be quite frustrated when you have no idea what book they are referring to. Additionally, why do people feel the need to use the restroom while shopping at bookstores? Is the smell of paper somehow contributing to that? Story 22. Veterinary technicians care for animals, a role that may seem like it involves petting puppies and kittens all day. In reality, it requires hard work and can be emotionally challenging. When they do get to work with a puppy or kitten, it is truly rewarding, as the rest of the job can be difficult and often goes unappreciated. Story 23. I may receive criticism for this, but a professional athlete comes to mind. Your entire life revolves around how well you maintain your body, how you perform, and the toll it takes on your body. Granted, the substantial financial rewards lessen the drawbacks. Story 24. Writing movies. A fortunate few get to see their vision brought to life. Most spend their energy on uninspired adaptations that are subject to the whims of directors, actors, and executives. When the movie inevitably fails, your script often becomes a prime candidate for blame. Story 25. As someone who works in finance, I will say finance. Individuals who lack competence do not last long in this field. A mistake can cost you your career, and the hours can be exhausting. A poor work ethic will quickly hinder your prospects. During business trips overseas, you often find yourself far from any famous landmarks in a rundown office, talking to colleagues you do not enjoy working with. Then you must take them to dinner and work to keep the conversation flowing. Story 26. Nursing has definitely shifted from patient-based care to a get-in and get-out model. It is not the nurse's fault. Rather, it is the administration and private equity companies attempting to transform hospitals into a drive-through experience. Story 27. Being a designer. You are everyone's magic marker, but also everyone's Cassandra. Long hours, constant retraining, and being at the end of the whip. Story 28. All of them. The only job that sounds amazing is this podcaster I listen to who watches movies and sports and chats with his friends about them. He has a large enough following that he makes millions at this point. Story 29. Cooking. Many people watch reality cooking shows and believe that those portray the true nature of the industry. In reality, it often involves long hours on your feet for 10 to 16 hours a day, with very few breaks, if any. Many times, you are closing at 11 p.m. only to return by 7 a.m. You work in an extremely hot environment where the risks of burns and cuts are everyday occurrences, and the pay is usually quite low. Even as an experienced cook, you might be fortunate to start at $15 to $18 per hour. It does not improve much as you advance in your career either. As a head chef, you may work 80-hour weeks on a salary for less money than you would make working overtime. Additionally, you interact with the general public daily, which reveals just how frustrating and intolerable many people can be. Story 30. Being a professor is even less glamorous than it seems. Just publish or perish. For the first 4 years, you're basically working hard to avoid being let go. Your summers off are often unpaid research days. You know how people have panic attacks about doing 5-minute presentations? Now imagine doing 50-minute presentations 3 times a week for each class. You have to develop your own material, or if you're overly ambitious, reuse someone else's resources, which can be chaotic. Grading can be tedious. You have to sit down for hours. I would go to a sports bar and spend an afternoon eating and grading, aiming to complete a third to half of the grading, then finish the rest the following morning and afternoon. Nobody attends office hours throughout the semester, and then during the last week, a bunch of students want to address their grades. Although I could give them critical feedback, I often don't, and it sometimes backfires when they seek extra points even though I've provided more support than they deserve throughout the semester. There's always drama within the department or difficult coworkers who secure grants and seem untouchable. There's always someone who acts inappropriately at conferences. I learned about one individual who didn't get the job, but I was a doctoral student and reported the incident during the interview review. Unfortunately, he found a position elsewhere and later served on my hiring panel, which resulted in me not getting the job. There are still individuals with prejudiced views that I have had to confront. Departments may hire people from Asia on work visas who submit papers to foreign journals that appear reputable but are not. These individuals may have published papers, presenting them as strong hires, yet they often struggle as professors and researchers. Still, they remain employed because of their publication records, regardless of their effectiveness. Story 31. Realtor. Selling Sunset, Love It or List It, and similar shows are not what real estate looks like in real life. It's unfortunate, but here I am, a middle-aged woman hanging out on the couch with my cat, browsing Reddit between emails with my bookkeeper, and dealing with their inability to write a coherent sentence. I'm answering questions from other agents as well as my clients and working on new marketing strategies for a listing that's taking longer than expected to sell. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my job, and I'm very successful, but sadly, I'm not doing it from a luxury car while wearing designer clothes and having lavish lunches with an entourage. Story 32. Bartending can be an intense profession. You may struggle with addiction or witness your regular customers suffer from substance abuse. It is a stressful, fast-paced job that relies on customer generosity for compensation. You are expected to be attentive and engaged at all times while on duty. However, watching people you care about slowly harm themselves is incredibly disheartening. Story 33. Environmental biologist. Going out on a boat is enjoyable, until you find yourself spending 14 hours in 6-foot waves, feeling seasick and trying to collect samples while soaked and covered in fish guts. Alternatively, you might be on the prairie on a 100-degree day, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, or on a mountain during a thunderstorm attempting to sample some obscure plant or animal. You could also be stuck waist deep in a wetland, covered in sweat and mud. Story 34. Yacht broker. To the outsider, it appears that we spend a lot of time on yachts. However, we do not. Moreover, clients can be disloyal, inexpensive, and inconsistent. Additionally, there is fierce competition for the 1% of the ultra-high net worth population. You can work for years without reward. I have left the yachting industry and do not miss it. Story 35. Teaching. While I am considering becoming a primary teacher, I find it to be stressful. It can be even more challenging in high school due to work pressures such as grading, lesson planning, and meetings. Additionally, the behavior of teenagers, unless in a private school, can be quite unruly and potentially dangerous. College or university is still stressful, but students tend to be more mature and can be expelled for causing trouble in class, so most do not misbehave. In a public high school, students can throw an eraser, insult the teacher, and shout, yet often return to class the next day. Story 36. Every lawyer I have seen looks impressive. In reality, it involves a lot of research, reading, and attending court proceedings. Story 37. Plumber. Everyone thinks it's all jumping on Goombas and whizzing through warp pipes to save princesses. But actually, you spend more of your time elbow deep in strangers' stubbornly lingering waste. Story 38. People think accountants are decision makers in a business. However, most of us do not get to spend money, make decisions, or choose what we want to achieve. We mainly relay information to those actually running the operations in a way that aligns with their goals or explains the information with minimal negative impact, even if it goes against our own opinions or desires. We are caught between management and executives on one side and those spending the money on the other, needing to satisfy both without any benefit for ourselves. Story 39. I don't know if dog grooming is portrayed as glamorous, but I promise it isn't just playing with dogs all day. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to wash the anal glands out of my hair and tend to my wounds. Story 40. Special agent. For every hour of actual interesting work, there is 10 times more paperwork and report writing. Story 41. Graphic design. People think we spend our time drawing enjoyable things. In reality, we are often chasing clients for better quality logos and explaining why the low-resolution image they found online cannot be used on a poster. Story 42. Tattooing is actually hard work. You rarely have time to yourself because you're constantly preparing for the following day. It is physically demanding, and customers and supervisors can be very challenging. Story 43. For anyone who stumbles upon this thread, here is an incomplete list of jobs people have listed: doctor, nurse, therapist, dentist, paramedic, engineer, financial analyst, intelligence analyst, special agent, firefighter, actor, musician, artist, photographer, game designer, teacher, professor, lawyer, veterinarian, chef, hairdresser, marketer, architect, writer, professional athlete, and more. My point is that most jobs are not as glamorous as you might expect. The key is learning how to enjoy the less desirable aspects that nobody likes to discuss. At least that is my takeaway from this post. Story 44. Cooking is not as glamorous as the Food Network and YouTubers make it seem. Story 45. When I graduated from school, I was told that being a management consultant was glamorous. Travel, work with executives, and influence the direction of the company turned out to be a grind. I repeatedly saw airports, hotels, and office buildings. Story 46. Tax accountant. Even the mundane portrayal of it makes it seem more glamorous than it really is. It's awful. Story 47. Owning a flower shop is stressful. It can be very challenging to make a good income, often just enough to get by. You are constantly on your feet, and if you're having a bad day, you can't show it because you are selling emotions more than the actual flowers. Sometimes, no matter what you create, it may never be good enough for some people. The creative burnout is real. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.